Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about one of the most important things in Excel, and that is the if function. I'm going to walk you through five super practical examples, starting simple and building up to more advanced ones like and, or, and even nested if statements. So by the end, you're going to be really comfortable using if statements in your own spreadsheets. So let's jump right in. All right, so let's start with the simplest version of if. In this first example, we just wanted to check one condition, and that is if this number is greater than 70, we want Excel to say pass. And if not, we want it to say fail. In this result column, I'm going to type equals if to get our if statement, open parentheses. Our first one is the logical test. So basically, we just want to check to see if this is greater than 70, comma, pushes us to our value if true. So if B4 is greater than 70, we want it to say pass. And another comma tells Excel what to do if this is not true, which we want it to say fail. And you want your open and close quotations so you can type text and then close parenthesis. And you'll see here it does in fact say pass. So now we can do a quick check by reducing our input to something less than 70. Say we do 65, it'll say fail. Then if I bump it back up to something greater than 70, such as 90, it'll say pass once again. The if statement also lets us compare two inputs with a very similar argument to what we just used before. All I'm going to do is just copy this previous formula and paste it in our result, except I'm going to change our input 1 to here. And instead of greater than 70, I'm simply going to back that up and click on C7. And now it's going to compare C6 to C7. And in this case, we want C6 to be greater than C7 in order for it to pass. And if it's not greater than C7, it's going to fail. In this case, C6 is less than C7. However, if we increase this to be greater, such as 27, it'll change to pass. This is generally the best approach for using the if statement. Having the hard-coded 70 in here means you have to change your formula every time you want to change this threshold. Most instructors and teachers will prefer that you use only cell references in your formulas. You don't actually want to type in hard-coded numbers. All right, let's take this to the next level and use if with the and statement. This allows you to have two conditions within the if statement. So with this one, I'm going to set it up to say that we need this input to be greater than 70, but less than 100. What I'll do is do if to get our statement started, and we use this function called and anything inside these parentheses must be true. So I can put this cell is greater than 70. However, we also want this cell to be less than 100. So once I put the parentheses on this and statement to close it, we are now back inside our if statement, and you can see that by the colored parentheses. Excel has a really nice feature for doing that. And now once I do the comma, we are now back to the value if true for the if statement, and the value if true, which means it's inside the 70 to 100 threshold, is we want it to pass. And if it's outside of this threshold, then we want it to fail. All right, so once I hit enter, then you can see this result turns to pass since the input is within 70 to 100. If I move it down to 65, it's going to fail. If I put it back up to 85, it'll pass again. And then once again, if I go over 100, it will return fail. Here's a more real world example where we have multiple inputs and we want them to meet multiple conditions in order for our if statement to be true. That's very similar to what we just did before. Going to type the if with our and. I want input 1 to be greater than, say, 70, input 2 to be greater than 90, and input 3, I want to say complete. Close our parentheses, and then type out the pass and the fail like we have before. In this case, it's going to be pass because it meets all of our criteria. Say I reduce input 1 to less than 70, say 65, it's going to return fail because it needs to meet all three of these requirements in order for it to pass. I'll put this back up to 75. Input 3 I'll change to incomplete, and you'll see once again the result is fail. All right, the next up is or. So this is a little bit different than and, where and requires everything in these parentheses to be true. or only needs one thing to be true to pass the requirements. So I'll type equals if, and the function for this is just or. I will type input 1 is greater than 70, and input 2 is greater than 40. Then we're going back to our if statement again. I'll type the pass. And in this case, since it does meet either one of the criteria of being greater than 70 or greater than 40, it's going to pass. If I reduce input 1 down to 65 and input 2 down to, say, 35, it's going to fail because neither one of these criteria is true. If I increase input 2 up to, say, 45, it's going to pass because one of the two functions are, in fact, true. All right, so this is the last example, and we're going to look at nested if statements, which lets us create multiple outcomes instead of just a pass-fail. This is really good for grading systems or tiered categories. I'll go off screen here while I type in all of the codings for the grades and the letters that we typically see in a grading schematic. All right, so I put together this grading schematic. I didn't go through and do the A plus, B plus, C plus, or the minuses. Just for the sake of this video, I went in and only did A, B, and C. All right, so to type this out, I'm going to type equals if. Our first test is going to be if this input is greater than equal to 90. And if it is, then I want the value to be A. And then if it's not greater than 90, I'm going to do another if statement. And this time I'm going to check to see if this value is greater or equal to 80. And if it is, I want it to be B. And if it's not, it's going to kick us to our third if statement, and where we're going to check to see if it is greater than or equal to 70. And if it is, then we want it to say C. And if not, we will just assume fail and close our parentheses. And like I said before, Excel has a really nice feature where it colors your parentheses so you make sure you have enough and you know which functions you're actually working in. Go ahead and copy the formula over here to the right side. And now you'll see if we have an input that is equal to or greater than 90, such as 90 or 95, we'll get the result of A. If it's 85, we'll get B. If it's 75, we'll get C. And if it's below a 70, we will get fail. This is where if really starts to be pretty powerful. All right, and that's the if function, going from basic to and, or even a nested decision logic. If this was helpful, let me know in the comments which example you liked the most, or if there's another Excel topic you want me to cover. If you want this spreadsheet as a template, just let me know and I'll put it together a downloadable version. But if not, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.